of the current prize winners, next year's prize winners that were able to make it today, and our mentors, and of course friends and family who came to see the presentations. I'm really excited to see all of them. Before we get started, I'm going to play a recorded address by Venki Haranarian, and after that we'll hear from Professor Leonard Kleinrock. Let me go ahead and open this up.
Hi, my name is Venki Haranarian. I'm one of the mentors of the IRI program. I also am one of the funders of this program. I'd like to welcome the class of 2017-2018. I read your proposals last week and I was struck by the quality of the proposals. I think you will have a great year following through on the proposals, encountering challenges, and the rewards of actually seeing some of them come to life. I hope the 2016-2017 program participants had the same experience, and I hope that some of the dreams that you started out with actually came to life during this process. I'd also like to give a shout out to Professor Kleinrock and his crew for creating this amazing program at UCLA. I do think giving students an opportunity to be entrepreneurial in their pursuing their passions is truly something remarkable, and it is through his efforts that we all have this opportunity to make this happen. I look forward to this year. I look forward to working with my mentee, and I look forward to some of your amazing proposals come to life this year. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'd like to welcome Leonard Kleinrock to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Scott. So this is a special pleasure for me to see this group of graduating IRI prize winners and the incoming group as well here. It's a dream that Brad and I conceived of 2 years ago with the premise that there is an untapped pool of talent in the undergraduate population that is going to waste. Much of it is sitting in front of me right now. The ideas are generated by these young people, and they have no way to realize the implementation or the fruition of their thinking. Typically what happens is they have a passionate idea, they have no funding, no lab space, no mentors, no faculty association, and they get busy not only with schoolwork, but with things like working in the cafeteria or in some fast food place, and those ideas die, never to be resurrected again. And so we thought we should help bring those ideas into fruition and realization. And we went to that gentleman you saw a short while ago, Venki Haranarian, and he was very happy to provide the funding. He said, I don't know if you understood his word, he said, funding, not only founder, but funding. It's his money that is providing the funding for these projects. So hats off to him. It's without him, it's a sine qua non, without which it would not have occurred. So my hats off to you, Venki. He recognized how valuable this idea is. And so the idea is we want the students to be able to pursue their ideas in a much more flexible environment where they're not burdened with the need to work in a cafeteria. And so what do? We provide those 4 items that I mentioned. Funding, $15,000 for an academic year, lab space, a mentor, and in many cases access to the faculty to exchange their ideas, their thinking, and see what they can do with a year's worth of flexibility along with their regular academic requirements. Now, we also decided to open this up not only to engineering students, where much of the focus had ordinarily been, but rather to reach out across campus to those departments and skills and areas that typically are not well funded. And so we accept applications from anywhere in the university, including the humanities, the arts, library, literature, as well as the science domains as well. And we don't discriminate on how we select students. In fact, we want to be as inclusive as we can, not only in discipline, but of course in all the usual ethnic, gender, etc. And so we request applications. And what happens to those applications? You may wonder why you, students, were selected, or how you were selected. I think we may have told you. The way it's done is this. It's not done on your GPA. It's not done on your background. It's done on the application that you make. We have a large number of applications and 12 mentors. The mentors review those applications, and each mentor says, I like that one. Anything that resonates with the mentor wins. So the 12 win is just by interest match. And in fact, they're anonymously presented to the mentors. They can't see anything about your background, sex, race. They do know what your department is, though, so get some sense. And so those matches have gone very well, actually. We feel that's a very sensible and simple and effective criterion to select the winners. Now, what's supposed to happen at the end of this year of work? Well, the outcome can be anything. It could be a company or a product, which is less likely. It could be a report, a paper, a study, a discovery, or a failure. There's much to be gained in failed endeavors. And so we accept all of that, of course. But the important point is that the students are allowed to pursue their own ideas, not the one that some professor has handed them or some classroom assignment said you have to do. So the passion builds up from within, and you get a chance not only to pursue an idea of your own, but it allows you to see what it's like out there when you're on your own. Yes, you have advisors, you have mentors, etc. But you've got to decide the path you're going to take and bump into the things you're going to bump into, not only in this project, which is a real project, but in the rest of your life's endeavors, be it research, be it work study, whatever. And in fact, we found that among this first class, this first graduating class. And in many cases, we found that the students underestimated how long things would take. That was perhaps the most common issue. They had 3 quarters to work on this. First quarter, well, I'll read a lot. Second quarter, I'll learn a lot. Third quarter, I'll implement and run what I wanted to run. And that's what happened in many cases, and that doesn't work. Okay, because the running is not smooth. Things are going to stop you, shorten your path. And now what do? How far do you backtrack? Do you pivot? Yes, in some cases they pivoted. In some cases they didn't get that far. But what they did do is they got the experience of what it means to try to bring something through a tunnel of unpredictable events, unpredictable barriers. And in some cases it came right through. In some cases what they ended up doing was learning a lot, becoming skilled, ready to take this idea and launch it further as they move ahead. So that's an important part of the idea. Now, this is supposed to come up. Let's get this. Let's get this into play mode if we can. For me. Okay, great. So that's us. That's our logo. And you saw during the coffee clutches, if you will, a bunch of slides running through. I'm going to go through them again with you. We have 3 groups. We have the staff and the leadership. We have the students themselves, and we have the mentors. So let's go through them. So I'm the director, fine. Along with me is Brad Fiddler. He's a co-founding associate director. And Brad has been most essential. You've got this set to run on its own, Scott. Can we undo that?
Here, just a sec.
At any rate, Scott has been enormously valuable in setting the ideas and helping to run this program. Scott has been devoting a lot of his time to this and other related projects. Scott is going, I'm sorry, Brad, not Scott, not Brad. You've been helpful too. Brad, where are you sitting? Yeah, well, don't hide. You shouldn't hide, because Brad is going on to do a number of other related issues. And Brad, I'd like to express my personal gratitude to you for all you've done, and I have a little gift. Thank you. And if we can advance this thing once again. Now, Scott, you all know, you've already appreciated his efforts. He's been enormously productive in serving as a program coordinator for the current class that's graduating. And Scott now has finished his academic work. He's on to great new ventures in the future. And Scott, we have a little measure of appreciation for you as well. We're going to miss Brad considerably, but we have someone to replace him for the new group, and that's Britt Paris, who's not here. She's down at a major conference today, and you'll be seeing much more of her as we move ahead. So, having done that, let's move on to our mentors now. This current year, we had 12 mentors, and some of whom are here, many of them who could not make it. Notice that Venki is one of the mentors as well. And that's a set of 12 mentors that we had the current year. In addition, in the forthcoming year, we have a few new mentors who will be joining that group, all very powerful, experienced people whom you as new members and old recipients should take advantage of. These people have enormous experience, all of them, the 12 before and these 4. They're part of your cadre of lifelong connections. In fact, the people you worked with in this group, the peer group that you've worked with, you should continue to keep in touch with. I expect you will. And bounce ideas off as you go ahead. Now, I want to congratulate the current group, the 2016-17 group of IRI recipients. Here you are. You've seen your pictures before. Congratulations to all of you. It's great work you've done, and you're going to show us what you did in just a few minutes. But the kinds of things that went on, the composition of this group, as I said, is extremely diverse. 50% are women, 40% are from what we call North Campus, which means the humanities, the arts, linguistics, library, etc., and the rest from the sciences, engineering, medical, etc. A very good group. And this is the current group. By the way, just raise your hand, those of you who are here for this new group. There's a half dozen here or more. Congratulations. We haven't met all of you yet individually. It's our first collective meeting, so welcome. Congratulations. And your dynamics also are similar in terms of diversity in interest and in focus. Now, these graduating projects have come from an enormously interesting collective set of ideas. Let me read you just a few of the titles to give you the range of the kinds of things you're going to hear today. The future of the LA Smart City, live virtual reality streaming, computer lab education in under-resourced squatter communities, keystroke dynamics using neural network techniques, metafuturism, we'll want to hear what that is in just a little bit, and on and on and on. These are not from a single mold. This is from across the wide set of ideas that you might expect from the net that we sent out there. Now again, much of what these students learned was to basically enrich their knowledge, become experts in fields they hadn't even touched before. And in fact, in many cases, they recognize the challenge of doing independent research. But mostly, it's doing your own thing, in your own way, in this collegial environment that we provided. Now, what I've asked them to do is to present their material in what I call this quadrant. It's a fairly standard kind of quadrant where it focuses their thoughts in their presentation, and they're all short presentations, by the way. In the upper left-hand quadrant, at the title, the topic, and a few words about what they're trying to do. Next quadrant is what's new about this. Why is it interesting? What was appealing to you? Next quadrant, something about what they did, the process, the methodology, etc. And last, what were the results? And so they'll all follow an idea like you'll see a chart like this from each one of them as they go along. So let's get the games beginning. First one up now is going to be a couple of students couldn't make it, by the way. Wandi can't talk. Okay, so she couldn't make it. And Yati was pulled away on a critical family event. And the third one, Vic, he got called back to the Taiwanese army. Like 1 day's notice. He's back there marching or doing whatever he does there. So we'll see what happens with those. And then we'll have the live presentation. So,
and because Wendy was ill and couldn't speak, she had her friend narrate her presentation, and she's a really great speaker. But that's why you'll hear a couple different voices as I play this.
Hello everyone. Before I begin, I would just like to apologize for my absence today and to thank Scott and Leonard for being understanding and giving me the opportunity to share my year through this recording. My name is Wendy and I'm a rising junior studying linguistics and computer science. I was fortunate to have Dr. Eric Hazeltine as my mentor, who supported me with kind opinions and professional advice that molded me throughout the year as I faced milestones and setbacks. Thank you, Eric.
I've had experiences with a variety of mental health issues within my generation. Volunteering for my municipal health services back in high school exposed me to the vast amount of teens who are vulnerable to depression and suicidal thoughts. Coming to college made this awareness a personal one, with my friends and even myself reacting negatively to the stress that we were not prepared for. Today, we face a mental health epidemic that current policymakers fail to address or even grasp. A 2014 study by UCLA revealed that more than 10% of college students often feel depressed. However, as an institution, UCLA's mental health service only provides an average 1 counselor for every 1,500 students. Last year, this service scored a C+ in its evaluation. That's not a grade that I'd be happy with. This is why I would like to introduce a new application that will allow anonymous surveying for policymakers and simultaneously create a community for students to bond and heal together. Back in my freshman year, I had the chance to volunteer on 7 Cups, an online psychotherapy community where I was taught to use a psychotherapy approach called active listening and learned about the incredible demand for more listeners like me. Given my background in linguistics and computer science, this experience inspired me to create a natural language model that used existing NLP and machine learning techniques. I imagined an automated agent that could be the single listener to every patient in need. I knew in order to design such a model, I needed to do conversation analysis on the active listening technique, and in order to train this model to be capable of understanding different forms of mental health issues and natural language queries, I needed a large conversation corpus comprised of similar mental health counseling scenarios. This led me to applying to the single largest data set available, authored by a text-based counseling service named Crisis Text Line. Initially, I wanted to tackle the problem of supply and demand and provide a service that was accessible 24/7 to anyone in crisis. Under the advisory of Professor Kleinrock, I analyzed the pragmatics of psychotherapy and created a working retrieval model based on the conversational features in a counseling setting. Unfortunately, my application to the Enclave data corpus was rejected recently due to crisis text line organizations' concern with having automated agents participate in the crisis intervention process. As a result, I was forced to pivot to another goal. Initially, I wanted to do something completely different, like a natural language assistant for the elderly for the purpose of Alzheimer's prevention. However, in the end, I decided to stay with my original purpose: survey current issues in mental health services and create a platform that could be used to better bridge the service provider with the student population. While researching a large amount of literature on current flaws in mental health services, I realized that current survey methods, from which current policies are drafted, are highly outdated and suffer from a high rate of bias. The problem stems from both the method of popular surveys, such as the California Health Interview Survey, which takes form in a laborious and deliberate multiple choice format and asks survey takers to classify their own emotions using generalizing words such as neutral, slightly agree, strongly agree, and not sure, which introduces variance into the survey. Furthermore, because such surveys are general health surveys, they do not preserve the anonymity of the survey taker and thus discourages actual patients from revealing their conditions. As a solution, I created a platform that is available to any member of UCLA, students and organizations included. The message behind my design is that drops of water can form to create a larger pond, and so can the voices within a student body. Users will be able to access the concerns and emotions expressed by other students. The large raindrop is filled with positive sentiment, which backbone is trained with actual student opinion posts, scraped from a UCLA social media page created for members of UCLA. And lastly, members will be able to access a topic model that serves as a timestamp-based trend watcher for popular concerns of the UCLA population. Behind all this, users are able to communicate with a chat agent that takes note of their concerns and reciprocates with a empathetic feedback based on the current collection of the user data, implemented using my previous retrieval model. I will be continuing my implementation of this prototype in the summer, combining the UI and Python sentiment analysis model through a Swift framework, so that I may launch a working iOS app. This project has allowed me to address a problem in my own life through questioning current conventions, combining all my background knowledge and put my programming, statistical, and linguistic knowledge into practice. It also challenged me with opinions within the profession. The setback I experienced with on-clock data taught me that employing automated agents in the psycho-counseling setting is a sensitive issue and brings about serious ethical responsibilities to its creator.
So we will play Niyati's recording now.
Hi, my name is Niyati Patel, and I'm a double major in economics and human biology and society. My project for IRI was focused on the future of Los Angeles as a smart city, and my mentor for this project was Colin Levin. With the projected 15 million residents by 2025, with 140 countries and 224 languages represented, Los Angeles is a rapidly growing and diverse city with aging infrastructure. To address many of the accompanying challenges, city government has been deploying many data-driven technologies. In less than 5 years, LA has opened up over 1,100 data sets, implemented many cloud-based technologies, and is now moving towards the Internet of Things and smarter technologies. Through these network of sensors, municipalities hope to generate real-time data on the city's environment and more efficiently deploy public services. Evidently, Los Angeles' move to a smart city is rapid and occurring, but measures of impact on public education isn't. Dubbed by some as Industrialization 2.0, smart technologies are changing every aspect of how cities are run, from waste management to energy consumption to traffic congestion. Through my project, I hope to map this landscape of IoT and smart technologies in LA, and most importantly, measure the impact it will have on aspects of society for years to come. Specifically, the smart city movement is very fragmented across LA, and I hope to consolidate what IoT projects have been or will be implemented in LA, who's managing and financing these projects, what data is collected and what will it be used for, what policies or laws are impacted, and additionally, I have identified many movements against IoT and hope to address the validity of their many concerns, including loss of jobs, loss of democracy, environmental risks such as fires,
exposure to radiation and associated health risks, and accuracy and privacy of data. To do so, I connected with many stakeholders across LA, from private tech companies to city employees to local grassroots organizations. Additionally, I did extensive literature review on best practices, challenges, and opportunities as evident for more advanced smart cities. For my final product, I consolidated and presented my research by creating a public education portal. This tool serves to educate the general public on what smart technologies are and the Internet of Things, how it works, etc., as well as specific projects in LA and underlying concerns. Here are some quick snapshots of my site that will be publicly available next month. Here, I highlight a particular project on smart parking, focusing on program features, presenting the data management systems and outcomes. For example, the Los Angeles government reported a 2.5% increase in parking revenue, despite a 13% drop in parking meter prices. Beyond local statistics and revenue, the impact of smart technologies has broader political and social impact. Examples include how smart grids are replacing entry-level meter reader jobs in the LA area by 2018. This is the only entry-level position that is a gateway to the top utility companies such as SoCalGas. Resulting challenges of the smart meter include how will education and workforce institutions adapt their hiring programs and provide new opportunities for advancement. Other examples of citizen concerns include the exposure to radiation, of which little research has been conducted. Currently, science states exposure is too minimal to cause significant harm, but I hope that my research will highlight gaps in current knowledge and facilitate future research. Thus, I hope my final project serves as a guide for researchers, city planners, and policymakers to further. Additionally, by highlighting publicly available data, I hope to encourage citizen involvement in creation of beneficial third-party apps. Under opportunities, I present examples of applications that can be made, such as a mapping app providing the most populated or well-lit route to walk home at night based upon sunset activities. Lastly, I was inspired to create my project on the future of Los Angeles as a smart city after the National Telecommunications and Information Administration asked for public comment and green papers for research and discussion on 30 to 40 questions posed on benefits, challenges, and role of government in advancing Internet of Things. As my next step, I hope to submit my findings on LA to influence more national and broader policy. I'm grateful for the opportunity and motivation that Internet Research Incubator has provided me this past year, and has solidified my interest in a career at the intersection of technology, policy, and education. Thank you.
Okay, so we will start hearing from some live human beings now, and but not a live human being that's not Len, because Len's gonna introduce Vic's project since he's not here, and then we'll just go right into the normal agenda, one after the other. After Anita's presentation, we'll ask everyone that's presented so far to just come up very briefly for a Q&A, so if everyone think of some good questions while they're up there, and then we'll continue with the rest of the presentations. So with that, let me just make sure this is not going to, there we go. Great.
Thank you, Scott. You know, it's interesting, the two presentations we heard, they both present data-rich engines and services to be accessed by the public for information and for advice. So they ended up being tools with some strong data behind them to allow growth. It's a live result as opposed to something that finishes and gets capped off, to be used by many people. Now, Vic, the fellow's marching around somewhere now in Taiwan. He took an interesting problem. By the way, his mentor is Venki. Venki got interested in this because he saw, I think, some commercial possibilities in it. He's going to recognize that most authentication is done by password these days, and they're very vulnerable and full of problems, as we know. He decided to use a biometric based on keystroke rhythm, the way in which you type in something, anything, and recognize the pattern. It's unique, it's like a fingerprint. So we decided to experiment with that. And he decided to use one of the most popular machine intelligence technologies these days, which are basically deep neural networks. He knew nothing about deep neural networks. And so there was the challenge. Essentially, he then, this is an example of a neural network with a number of layers, and he needed some data to test his ideas on. He wanted to train this thing, this black box called a neural network, and he got some data from essentially Carnegie Mellon. They had a number of subjects, basically 51 subjects, and they asked these subjects to type in the same 10-character, allegedly a password, but it could have been anything, 400 times, and measured how well the CMU system could recognize. And the CMU system obtained a moderate response. What he did then is use a neural network, and he trained it on 300 of the 400 entries, and then tested it on the last 100. And so he trained this neural network to recognize this user, that user, the other user, and each one had a different kind of pattern. And he resulted in getting over 80% accuracy, which is far lower than you want for a commercial product, but very interesting in terms of your proof of concept. And so he did obtain a fairly good result, learning about neural networks and using them on his own. He also recognized that he needed to go to more of these internal layers, more hidden layers. And he started to experiment with that. The initial results didn't improve the performance very much, and he realized he has to learn a lot more about the way this wild new world of neural networks, neural networks, by the way, are about 60 years old, but they haven't been studied until about the last 10 years. So he ended up doing that, set up a system, did a lot of coding. All of that's available on GitHub for people to see. He's got the project, the papers, the research, the methodology, all on the net for others to use. And he's going to continue to pursue this in terms of expanding the parameters and the number of layers in this these hidden layers in this deep neural network. So the result was a proof of concept, a moderate result. The kind of results you really want, you've got to have at least less than 1% false alarms and less than a small fraction of 1% missed detection, namely missing the person. It is the person and he claims it's not. So he's got a long ways to go to make it a commercial product, but in terms of getting started, he made considerable progress from starting from zero. So that's it.
Does this work? Test? That's okay. I can just yell, I guess. No, that's right. It's fine. What does it say? You just have to turn it on.
Hello everyone, my name is Rio Kato. I'm a fourth year mechanical engineering student here at UCLA, and my project is the live virtual reality streaming. And my mentor for this project was Professor Kleiner. So the main goal of my project is to live stream video to a VR headset via the internet to create a immersive experience for the user while also allowing them to have user input. So I'd like to get started by explaining all the stuff I have up here. This is a VR headset that uses a smartphone for the display. And on the headset, I have the sensor right here, which tracks the motion of the user's head. This data is then sent over to this tank right here. On the tank, we can see there's a camera mounted on the 2-axis gimbal. The gimbal has 2 servos that recreate the motion of the user's head. So if I take this headset and move it up and down, and left and right, you can see all the motion is being recreated by the gimbal. And also I have this controller right here. By using the joystick on here, I can move the tank forward, and backward, and left and right in place. And the way all these are communicating with each other is over the internet using these microcontroller modules. And as you guys may have noticed, I have a lot of these red plastic parts on the project, the controller, the gimbal, and the various cases. Those are specialized parts for this project that I designed using CAD software and 3D printed using my 3D printer. Okay, what's new with my project? The main new idea is live streaming to a VR headset with minimal latency to allow for user input. So live streaming VR has actually already been done to some extent using 360-degree cameras, but those cameras require a lot of processing to stitch together the full 360-degree view, leading to latencies of up to 30 seconds. But in my case, I used a single smartphone camera, so it requires minimal processing and the data is relatively small. So I was able to get the latency down to about 0.5 seconds. And also I've incorporated the remote control and head tracking to allow for the user inputs. And also to create this actual system, I used a lot of existing hardware and software such as Skype for video streaming and the internet and the microcontrollers for communication. And now I'd like to show a quick video to show how everything works together. Okay, so you can see the, oh wait. Start over. Okay, so you can see the tank on the floor right there, and myself with the VR headset. So the video from the camera is displayed on the monitor right there, but it's also shown inside the VR headset in a stereoscopic 3D format. Now, as you can see, all my head movements are being reflected in the video. Now I'll be moving around. So the setup for this demo was the tank and myself were both in my room connected to the same Wi-Fi, but as I mentioned, they are communicating over the internet, meaning I could potentially have someone take the tank to a different city, like New York, let's say, and connect it to the internet there. And once they're connected, I will be able to take control and potentially explore the streets of New York from this conference room or my room right there. I'll let the video run for a little bit longer. Okay, so that concludes the description of this setup right here. For the future, I'm actually graduating UCLA as of this quarter, and after graduation, I'm moving to Japan to work for Toyota Motor Corporation for a mechanical engineering position. So I will actually not have as much time to work on this project. But I feel that participating in this project, the Internet Research Incubator, it has greatly expanded my knowledge in the computer science and electrical engineering area. And I think that will help me greatly in my future as the automotive industry continues to expand into the self-driving and electric vehicles. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Brown. I am a junior studying human biology and entrepreneurship and biomedical research. Before I get started, I really wanted to thank Dr. Kleinrock, Scott, Brad, and my mentor, Dr. Sylvester, for all of the help over the past year, and of course for the wonderful opportunity to explore digital health. So my work is framed upon the question of how has the internet changed healthcare, and how will it continue to change healthcare? When I started investigating this, I found kind of somewhat of a dichotomy that while the consumer experience of healthcare really hasn't changed, there's a picture of the doctor's office there. That's really the same as it was 50 years ago, give or take, for a desktop monitor that might be in the room. There has been a democratization of health information. So you can go online and educate yourself and, in some cases, question your doctor and their decisions in a way that you really couldn't 50 years ago before the internet. Although not all of this information is accurate or reliable, there is this dichotomy. So if you compare this to innovation in personal banking, entertainment, and transportation, which is really integrated and personalized, healthcare is extremely slow. And I found that the aversion to adaptation was really institutional, systematic, and global. So my assertion for my project was really that digital healthcare tools can be used to improve quality, both in patient experience and for healthcare providers, and also outcomes by enhancing communication, providing more accurate information, and really integrating healthcare into your daily life and changing the thought process of healthcare from being a checkup that you do every 6 months or an emergency care room visit to something that's part of your daily life and really integrated, resulting in better outcomes in a more modern experience. To do this, I utilized a lot of interviews. I met with a venture capitalist. I'm studying abroad in London, so I met with an NHS nurse, went to a conference there to learn more about healthcare. I found that the difference, obviously the UK is a very different healthcare system, but a lot of the problems facing innovation are very similar and stem from a lack of funding. They have a review board there, ironically called NICE, which decides which innovations to fund every year. And a lot of them are not funded just due to lack of funding. So the lack of healthcare innovation is like I said, global and due to the complexity of the system. So to kind of tackle this, I wanted to dive deep into a particular issue. So one of the things I found in a lot of my interviews were that people were having issues with medication management. So for example, they're prescribed, let's say an antidepressant for which there are a lot of different variants on the market, and it's kind of like a guess and check method. So the doctor will prescribe them medication, say, hey, try this. I hope your side effects aren't too bad. Good luck, see you in 2 months. So they found that this was ineffective and that there were a lot of problems with doctor-patient communication. Like you go to the doctor every 2 months, they're asked, how has it been? You're like, oh, I felt okay, I don't really know. So I wanted to focus on improving communication and also tracking side effects. And this could also tackle medication adherence, which costs the US $290 billion per year, each year, and adverse drug reactions, which result in over 1 million hospitalizations per year. So a lot of the apps on the market really focus on tracking medication, just adherence, and kind of they'll do reminders, so like remember to take your medication today. I wanted to focus more on communication, integration, and specifically side effects. So I came up with a prototype. Is that Chrome? Okay. All right. So this will show you kind of all of your prescribing doctors. You can go through, click on a doctor profile, get more information of the doctor. It'll list the medications that this doctor prescribes. So for example, if you can't see, this primary care physician has prescribed an asthma medication and an antibiotic for strep throat. So you can go through and see kind of dosage instructions. You can look at a journal of how long you've been taking the medication, and most importantly, track side effects. So for example, let's say you want to look up dizziness. You can rate your level of dizziness, see which medications you're currently on that might cause dizziness, and so this will show dizziness in a specified time period, so in the last 3 months. And in this example, it shows that the patient's dizziness has gone up dramatically in the last month, and that's also when a different Abilify, an antidepressant, was prescribed, so it indicates that maybe the dizziness or a different side effect could be caused by the addition of said medication. And the goal for this was really to, again, focus on side effects, be helpful for prescribing. So let's say you went back to the doctor and said, haven't really been feeling good on this medication. You can look back and see, well, this is exactly what I've been feeling day to day. And then also to understand if you're on multiple medications, how those may interact, and also the layers of different side effects as well. So the big picture is eventually, if people started using this, to come up with enough data on different people, different medications, and their side effects, which could be used in tandem with biomedical research being done on biomarkers in different prescriptions. So the intersection there of digital health with biomedical research could lead to much better prescribing and less side effects. And then the larger takeaway is that there's lots of potential for the internet to improve patient experiences, as long as we're open to embracing and funding digital health innovations. And hopefully we can integrate healthcare with our daily lives and daily goals, and that would all be possible by the internet. Thank you.
Out of curiosity, can you hear me in the back if I just am away? Okay, great, because I don't want to be hiding behind here. Hi, my name is David Khattaturian, and this year I got to investigate whether primary sequence parameters, let's see if this thing works actually. It's hard to see. Well, investigating whether primary sequence parameters can predict protein function. Let's see if this works. Hey, this thing actually can see things. Sweet. So, it would probably help to understand before I start talking about that what primary sequences are. So proteins are generally considered the biological workhorses. They're like the nanoscale structures that cause the microscopic activities that make cells live, right? So a primary sequence is a string of amino acids that comprise the protein. This primary sequence is just a list. It then folds into a 3D structure or conformation, and usually from the structure we can ascertain what sort of molecular function it has, and then understand what it would be doing in the cell. But if sequence causes structure and structure causes function, I was wondering whether we can have sequence determine function as opposed to using the general biological dogma of structure determining function. This would be amazing because current methods in going stepwise from sequence to structure is very computationally intensive. And the homology-based predictions, while pretty good, aren't as good as we would hope. And this machine learning thing might be able to solve that. This would be amazing for applications in pharmaceuticals, because as it stands, usually what they do is they get a potential drug, make thousands of mutations, make a ton of them, test them all, take the best 25%, amplify it, test them all again, amplify. So this is very costly, wasteful, time intensive. And I can imagine if we're a bit smarter about what we start off with, we could save a lot of time and energy, which might lead to cheaper pharmaceuticals and quicker drug discovery. Also, looking at it a little bit more abstractly, looking over here, what's with these zeros and ones, if we can think of the sequence, primary sequence, as just a string with a 20-letter alphabet, and if we can figure out what functions underlie it, we could make a bit vector where we say which functions apply to the specific sequence we have. You can imagine very long strings to like maybe 200 maybe bits of a bit vector. This would lead to amazing data compression. It might be a little bit lossy, but in this day and age of big data, I'm sure that could be useful in various applications. So as I said, I decided I wanted to wield the hammer of statistical learning. To do that, I used scikit-learn in Python because that's the programming language I'm most comfortable with. Now, I didn't know pretty much anything about machine learning before this, so there was a lot of tutorials on data school and various other references online to help me along the way. To collect all the primary sequences and the functions, I used UniProt, which is an online protein database where scientists from around the world manually annotate with their research which proteins did which functions. So you know it's a very high quality data set. Now, I talked about primary sequence parameters. To get those parameters, I used something called XPaSI ProScale, which compiled a list of scales from the scientific literature. For each amino acid, they would judge it on factors like hydrophilicity or average flexibility. And using functions for this entire sequence, I would generate a primary sequence parameter to describe that sequence. Putting all of those together would lead to the machine learning program that would ideally be able to predict these functions. So what happened? You'll see this number here of 0.55 for an AU-ROC curve. To put that in a little bit more perspective, if you were to make a machine learning model that had an AU-ROC curve of 0.80 for stocks, you would be a millionaire in months, which would, I mean, that'd be great, right? And on the less impressive end of the spectrum, 0.50 would be flipping a coin for yes or no for binary classifications. So in the very little time I've unfortunately been able to have to iterate and test things, I'm already finding the machine learning model is already able to find signal in the noise. But I think a fair question is, can we do better than that? Couple things that we can do to see that. So my laptop, though it tries really hard, is not meant to be doing these sorts of intense computational tasks. Every single time I'd want to run one model, take at least 12 minutes, and then you have 10-fold cost validation. So I'm out of commission for 2 hours every time I wanted to test something. Kind of slow. It would be not, so if we used beefier servers, for example, using Google Cloud Platform, we could drastically cut down iteration time, which would, of course, help with testing. Also, I definitely learned quite a bit about machine learning during my project, but I'm definitely not an expert. I'd imagine hitting the books and understanding the deeper intricacies, what sort of built-in assumptions there are, would greatly help in informing which models to choose and which parameters to tune. Finally, talking with a bioengineering professor, I'm in bioengineering by the way, talking with a bioengineering professor of mine led me to thinking of the possibility of using machine learning models in biomaterial characterization. And biomaterials, they're used in places such as drug delivery and biodegradable implants. So they'd have very useful medical applications. I'm hoping that this cycle of iteration, knowledge gathering, and thinking of applications would allow for developing a machine learning model that could have scientific, medical, and technological applications. So I remember about a year ago, I was hearing all this buzz about machine learning, and it was great to be able to have the chance to explore that tool, answering a question or looking into a question I've been very interested in for a while. With that, I'd like to thank IRI for making this possible and my mentor, Sophia Noble, for all their support this year. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anita Guo. I am a linguistics and computer science major. So the title of my project is In Tone, Real-Time Visual Feedback for Mandarin Tone Acquisition. So the research question that I've been focused on for the past about year now was, can pitch tracking technology help non-native speakers learn tonal languages more effectively? So you might ask, what is pitch tracking? What does that mean? So pitch tracking is a technique used by phoneticians to estimate the pitch, also known as the fundamental frequency, in recorded speech. We can take a recording and look at how that fundamental frequency changes over the period of a spoken word, and we do that by using digital signal processing. So why does this matter? So people who speak tonal languages such as Mandarin, Thai, or even Bantu rely on tonal distinctions to distinguish between a word like ma, which means mother, or ma, which means to scold. And obviously you wouldn't want somebody to think that you're angry when you're just trying to say something about your mother. And so we have a problem in our current education system. We teach people in language classes, especially in languages such as Mandarin Chinese, how to produce tones by giving them tonal markers, such as lines on a piece of paper and lists of vocabulary. And the only time they ever hear it is through recordings or in a classroom setting. And so people really struggle to acquire tones because they don't get enough input, which is a really big cognitive problem in developing your cognitive abilities to understand and be able to produce those tones. And so I got this idea to produce a language learning application where you can see the tones on a screen and practice for yourself. And so by using pitch tracking, you can see the pitch displayed in real time and see how a native speaker produces those tones. So, so my 3 goals this year were to, 1, create the application, 2, provide non-native speakers with the ability to build out those cognitive functions in their own time outside the classroom setting where they can practice on their own, and for us to use a very portable sort of application that anyone can do or use from anywhere. So I decided to make this a web application that you can pull up in just about any browser using a very standard standard called the Web Audio API. So in the process of creating this, I decided to use Ruby on Rails and also to use JavaScript because there's a lot of examples available on the internet for pitch tracking algorithms that have already been designed. One of the really well-known pitch tracking algorithms out there is called Yin, and it is really great at doing a lot of things, but it's not very easy to apply to this sort of application. So I found an example of autocorrelation, which is another type of pitch tracking that a professor, Mark Huckvale at the University College London, has implemented to a limited extent and made available through the web. And I contacted him, and he very generously shared that algorithm with me. So that provided the basis for my project. So during the fall quarter, I spent a lot of time doing a literature review and coming up with a wireframe. During winter quarter, I did IRB review and got permission to work with native speakers and people who are learning, and started to develop the project in Ruby on Rails. During spring quarter, I cleaned up that data, started segmenting it and programming it in JavaScript and using the Web Audio API. So I've taken some screenshots of my application that I've begun to develop, and you can see here there is I don't have my, So as you can see here on the left side, there's a list of different exercises. You can click on each one, and each one is associated with a different word, and you can practice on your own. And then you can hear the native speaker by pushing the play button for the audio. And the purple line is the native speaker producing the audio. And then the red line is where you practice for yourself. So there are 4 tones in Mandarin, as you can see in the top right. Just as an example, I pulled out 4 of the vocabulary words from my exercise list. And in the first tone, which is ma, you see that the speaker is producing too low of a pitch. In the second tone, which is the rising tone here, you see that the rise is too sharp, and that's often a result of the fact that in the written representation, it's just a straight line upward, and you don't see there's actually a pitch contour, which isn't a straight line. In the third tone, the bottom of the dip here is sometimes, it's what linguists call creaky voice, where your voice kind of goes in and out, and it's not actually a continuous straight line. And that's something that a lot of Mandarin learners don't actually learn to produce. They don't have enough examples of that. And in the fourth tone, we have kind of a similar problem. Now, it's really hard to tell the difference between a very low tone and a creaky voice tone because of modern speech tracking algorithms that are available. So one of the problems that I propose future research on is coming up with a way to distinguish the difference between a very low tone and actual creaky voice, because that's really important for someone who's learning to speak a tonal language. I want to thank the IRI for giving me this opportunity to work on this research. I want to thank Professor Drucker and Professor Kleinrock for providing their mentorship throughout this year. And I'd also want to let you all know that after graduating, I'm moving up to San Francisco to work as a natural language processing engineer. So all this work has given me an incredible opportunity to learn very relevant skills for what I'll be doing in the future. And the project has also, there's been a lot of interest in my project coming from the Center for Digital Humanities. So hopefully they'll be able to carry this on and use it for actual language learning in the future. Thank you.
So can we have Rio, Sarah, David, and Anita just come up to the front if anyone has any questions for them about their project, their process, next steps. You can just spend about 5 minutes and answer those questions. Anyone?
I have a question.
Yeah, shout them out.
You go ahead. Okay. I was gonna ask David, what for the future of using if this machine learning becomes very accurate, what do you think the future regulation within the drug development will look like? Or will it be different, or is it just helping develop it and it's still the same sort of testing? What do you think?
Right. Well, FDA is usually not very nice about technology moving things along too quickly. The way I say it is, if this goes well enough, it can inform the pharmaceutical companies to be smarter about it. So that kind of skips the necessary things of, automation, that's bad. We need human interactions to ensure. That's usually what FDA wants. They want to make sure that it works fine. And automation is kind of, you have to trust it a little bit too much. So I see that this could work very well in the framework right now. It would be amazing if the FDA allows for this thing to automatically chug through everything and make it come out. But if nothing else, it should streamline the process for now.
I wonder for each of you, when this idea came to your mind, what motivated you to follow the research you described here? And there's some interesting stories behind it, so
being in bioengineering, I've always been interested in biology. You hear that dogma, structure determines function, all the time. It's about as often as mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. If you guys have heard that before? All the time. And it's something you accept. It's a dogma, but it might be dogma for a reason, but once people stop asking why that is, that's kind of an issue. And it was very interesting looking at the literature searches. I found very few things attempting to use machine learning to go over it and to go from sequence to function as opposed to structure to function. And the ones I do were like, we also do modeling and we mainly focus on that, but we kind of tried this machine learning thing. And I'm like, there was definitely some place to explore and see why we can't use the transitivity property we do in math all the time, why it would or wouldn't apply in this case. So that interest and this opportunity allowed me to pursue that.
Well, my project, my project was influenced by an event with my grandfather. About 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with a disease, and as a result, he was hospitalized and bedridden. And as a result, he couldn't go back home or go and explore outside. and that took a toll on him. And I felt that having a technology like this that would allow people to explore the world from their own room or hospital bed would help them psychologically and to like combat disease and yeah, just get better and stuff. So that was my motivation for making this project.
For me, I grew up as a heritage speaker of Mandarin, and so when I helped to host a conference about a year ago with my club, the Berlin Linguist Society, I saw some other undergraduate students presenting research on a similar topic to mine, showing that this kind of work could be very effective in transforming language learning. I felt the need to create something that could be accessible to people and to be able to be used in a classroom setting.
Yeah, for my project, I was really interested in why it seems like healthcare just really wasn't keeping up with how far technology had come, and I wanted to focus in on a specific area. And just through I just interviewed people and I said, what is your experience like with healthcare? When you go to the doctor, do you call, do you make an appointment? Do you go to the doctor? Do you feel like it's integrated with your daily life? And a lot of people said no. And specifically, the medication problem kept coming up where people felt like people are, I'm being thrown a prescription and then I kind of have to go figure it out on my own. And I just wish there was more integration because it can be scary. And then when I go back to the doctor, I feel like they're like, oh, how have you felt? And that's a really vague question. How can I answer that? So I kind of wanted to solve that problem of being able to answer, how did you feel on this medication, and back that up with data, and then also kind of potentially enhance communication between physicians, both between multiple physicians for each patient and the patient and the physician. And again, this all stemmed just from talking with people who had the specific issue and would probably benefit from having a tool like this, and cooperative doctors.
I have a question for you, Sarah. So, sorry, someone else now. I think so. Your project's like really good for the whole patient and doctor interaction. Once you see a physician, keeping up your medications and keeping track of, I guess, your progress over time. Have you thought about creating an application for pre-hospital visits, maybe like something that's more preventative? I know you presented like a slide on WebMD in your first quadrant. So how can patients know more about health before they have to see a physician in person?
Sure, yeah. I actually interned last summer at a digital health startup in the Bay Area, and their whole thing is virtual care. So I kind of learned a lot about this, and it was inspiring, but it was also like I was exposed to the complexity and all the limitations. So in a way, it was discouraging also to see that as well. So I think that is really cool, and that's something in kind of with the vision of integrating healthcare into your daily life and going beyond just a checkup and emergency room services, is being able to, it makes the most sense, instead of going to the doctor when you're sick, being able to just Skype with somebody and Skype with a doctor. It's so much faster and it's cheaper. So I think there are companies that definitely are doing that, and it's something I'm interested in as well.
I have a question for the Mandarin researcher here. Linguists and neuroscientists have thought for a lot of years that because of brain plasticity, there are hard phonemic boundaries that once you get past age 8 or so, you will never be able to discern or articulate.
Yeah.
In this categorical perception, that there's something in your brain that just gets hardened like cement at about 8 to 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
And attempts to train people to recognize and articulate these phonemic boundaries, like in Mandarin is a good example, have failed so far. So are you saying that you made a breakthrough?
So one aspect of my project that I didn't get around to was actually testing the application on a group of language learners. So I don't have a conclusion on that exactly, but I have found research that suggests that it is possible, and that and I've also learned in my linguistics classes that there are different parts of the brain that acquire language differently, whether you are learning language before the age of 8 or whether it's later in life. You can still learn other aspects of language through transferring different types of knowledge. And by accessing the visual aspect and the audio aspect, I think and I hope that you would be able to acquire those tones later in life.
Well, I just want to point out
Yeah.
that for future research, that I think there's promising evidence way beyond what you're doing in brain plasticity. As someone said earlier, things that we think are so ain't so. And whenever you find that, it's very cool.
Yeah.
And I think that if it turns out that we have more plasticity than we thought, you can then say, well, what's going on inside the brain to make that happen?
Right.
So I would encourage you to kind of think in that direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, first I want to thank you all for a really inspiring set of presentations and projects. And now I'm going to ask the dark side question. Have you thought about the unintended consequences that might come from your research?
Who wants to tackle that first?
And if so, what they might be.
Yeah. One thing that I thought about is one of the big picture things I saw with my project was being able to collect a lot of data on different patients from different demographics and how they respond to a certain medication. And I think there are so many problems with the security of health information and the problem of who owns that data. What if a pharmaceutical company came and tried to buy that data instead of it being used like for the public good? So I thought about that. I also thought about, I don't know if this specifically answers your question, but the whole problem of with healthcare, almost everyone I talked to said this is a really cool idea, but who's going to pay for it? So that was another issue that I ran into, and kind of the frustration of thinking, well, this would be so cool to have, but until the healthcare system is fixed, it's really not feasible. So that was kind of dark, is I guess a dark discovery.
For me, I actually ran into an issue when I was trying to get participants for my research. With the rise of voice recognition technologies such as Amazon Echo, a lot of people are very hesitant to have their voices recorded, and that's part of the reason why I feel like the IRB review is so important, was so that we can keep that information secure and not something that people can just access and use for their own purposes.
Well, for my project, I haven't really thought of anything like that, but I guess if people were able to explore anywhere from their own bed or something, people just might become really lazy and not go out as much anymore.
I suppose for mine, I'm a big believer of science and innovation, constantly trying to learn new things, but I was talking about the possibility in pharmaceuticals. I would hope that would inspire more drug discovery, but it might just mean, oh, well, pharmaceutical companies, great, we can use this and save a bunch of money and still sell at the high cost or whatever. Maybe also for biomaterials, some people might patent things and not sell them instead of making new implants. So there's a possibility of people kind of going for the money instead of going for the greater good of knowledge.
Okay, great. Let's give everyone let's just take a very short 5-minute break before Ashley starts. Please get some more food. And there are bathrooms around the corner outside here, or if you go all the way across.
Can I talk up here? You want to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Ashley. I'm a third year. My mentor was Professor Blanchett, who's not here, but he's in the Information Studies department. So that department ended up like really shaping my view of my project. So instead of going for any niche thing, I'm kind of talking about like the internet as a whole, like the foundation of it, how individuals interact with it, and the consequences for society at large. I talked about filter bubbles, and it's basically the idea that you go to the internet thinking that it's this unbiased world and you have access to all this information, and really it's more limiting than you think. Because of self-selection and personalization, you end up with a very limited view, but you think it is everything. So you just end up having like reinforced values again and again and again, and it can be really destructive if it's not addressed. So there's a really cool graph here of like, let's just say that you only go to the same like Huffington Post, you never look at Breitbart or Fox News, and it doesn't exist in your world at all, and you're totally shielded from it. But then if you keep reading CNN, if you're liberal, again and again, you're never really going to get anywhere. So a lot of that is also invisible, which is what's dangerous, that like Google will eliminate views or eliminate things from your view without even telling you.
So if I search for UCLA, it may tell me a map location because they know that I'm in LA and maybe they know that I want to go there. But somebody who's on the East Coast, it may just say like results from Wikipedia. The point is that you see different views and you aren't aware of it. My project started with the idea of catching young people up. I was frustrated by the number of times that an older person would say like, have you seen this movie? And I would say I haven't heard of it. And they would be like, surprised, but I wasn't born yet, so like, it's not really my fault. I was really frustrated about that, and I didn't know what else I was missing, and I have a 5-year-old sister, and I was wondering how she's ever going to learn to catch up to the popular knowledge that everyone else knows. So that's where it's like started, but it like evolved to all these other divides. Economic backgrounds, religion, opinions, political differences, location. There are just like so many ways to divide people that you don't know their perspective at all. And if you can step into like the perspective of an older person, you can step into any other perspective. And the internet really allows for this kind of connection and doesn't always utilize it. I think that a historical perspective is really like important. Remember like Gutenberg, back to like your history class of like the last time information could spread at rapid like measures, and it allowed for like a rise in literacy and everyone was able to share and have this like new enlightenment. But if you limit it, then you can end up with this kind of propaganda world that like you think that you're seeing everything and you're not, and it's very narrowing and dangerous, depending on if you're an optimist or a pessimist. So I guess the question is, how do you discover what you don't know you don't know? Like if you're in a bubble, I don't know, it's hard to tell. And as like a lot of developing countries are being introduced to the internet, there are all sorts of newly connected people that need to tackle this problem. So my like personal research was like based mostly on 2 classes I took in the Graduate School of Education and Information Studies, which are called Internet and Society and Digital Cultures and Societies. And also like Eli Pariser, who was the founder of this, he only coined the term in 2011, which kind of jumps over to like the main hurdle that like this is so new. Like I'm not saying that there have never been limitations in your perspective, obviously, but the internet like has really like rapidly, I don't know, there are a lot of things we just haven't talked about, like this kind of limitation, and you need to be aware of it, and it's really not talked about until actually the 2016 presidential election, which like luckily happened during the same time. There's a idea that like one of the reasons Trump was elected was because Hillary supporters thought that everyone supported Hillary, so they were really comfortable and like believed they would win, but they didn't because they didn't see the perspectives of any like Trump supporters, and that's not really a balanced view of the world. So yeah, that's one of the problems. Also just like social media is fundamentally flawed. It's like made to group people who are similar. So saying that like you should include random diversity into that is like foundationally very difficult. And also you're comfortable in your bubble. It's what you're used to. Yeah, and then companies don't really want to do it because they have financial incentives. And also you do need some kind of curation or else you end up with no way to sort what you need to know. Like you do need to sort the ocean somehow because of information overload. So the main solutions that like came in my world was like Eli Pariser proposed for individuals just to diversify your feed as much as possible, befriend people with different perspectives, like follow Breitbart as well as CNN on Twitter. He thinks Twitter is probably like the best platform that exists. Governments need to revamp their laws to like protect tech users because they're really outdated, and companies need to like be more transparent with their policies. I would add that you also need to have responsible policies. One that's really in the news right now is like net neutrality and the idea that you need to, well, okay, it's really complex, it could be its own presentation, but in some, it's the idea that companies, internet service providers basically, if they could control the speed at which they provide their information, you could end up really biasing a view. Like, let's just say that Netflix is like a lot faster at buffering than some competitor, then everyone would go and use Netflix, and like, it's really powerful stuff. There are a lot of policies you need to be aware of. I don't know, this topic really intersects with a lot of information study policies. I also add that like you should just get outside more and like travel and like find new perspectives. I think that one of the problems with like sharing perspectives right now is that there's like a fear of amplified public shame if you're wrong. So thinking back to the days of like coffee houses where everyone could just kind of discuss and learn and educate themselves without fear of like where that will go, if it'll go to a future employer or like admissions committee somewhere. If we could just kind of bring back like well-intended intention to educate, I think that's really important. In addition, I think that just knowing about this phenomenon is really important. So like share it with your friends, like be aware that your view is so limited. And also just be aware that like as people are being connected to the internet, this really is a growing problem. Like that's what the graph is. Like American adults who use the internet, it's like approaching 80% as of 2014. The yellow line is for like world average, and then orange is like developing countries. It's really important to see how people are going to, as they connect, what they'll see. Like if they only follow President Trump, then like you imagine that that'll be really biased. And then concrete project ideas that I came up with would be like a whole new platform, because Facebook really doesn't address this, so a whole new platform would be kind of necessary. Chrome extensions to like track and manage what you see and how balanced that is. I think that would be a really important one. And lastly, like a digital chatbot, because a lot of education comes from a dialogue, and being able to have like a digital cool aunt to like talk to, or digital great grandparent, like that'd be really cool. Yeah, so that was my project. Thank you to IRI and everyone. Thanks.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Chi-Chi. I'm a senior in the Comp Studies department with a specialization in computing, and my project was on designing the m-commerce shopping experience. So just to step back and sort of look at why is this important? Why do we need to look at m-commerce, and how does that impact me? First of all, these are some statistics that are pulled from the web that I came across while I was doing this research. So over 200 billion apps will be downloaded by the end of 2017. And to put it into more perspective, over 50% of online shopping is now conducted on a mobile device. That's what m-commerce stands for, so mobile commerce, where the M comes from. Yeah, and last but not least, in 2015, although US adults spent 59% of their time on mobile compared to 41% on desktop, only 15% of their dollars were actually spent on mobile. So that's a really stark difference, right? Like over half is actually spent on mobile, but people aren't spending money on mobile. And why is that so? So design plays a huge part in this. We all know that mobile is smaller screen real estate, and it makes it challenging to craft an experience that really helps a user along and actually purchase something. So I was interested in investigating this. So how can we make m-commerce design better? What are the common design patterns in two main key flows, categorization and, oh, sorry, I wrote it wrong here, but navigation. And third of all, what is the future of m-commerce? So to really tackle this, over the course of a year, I did 15 m-commerce app evaluations. So these were based off of the top mobile shopping experiences in fashion on the iOS App Store. I chose 15 because there's currently a limited number of shopping apps in fashion on iOS, but I do think that that's the future of where shopping is moving in the future. So I decided to take the top 15 ones that are arguably a good experience already, but how could it be better? So I compared and contrasted those across Think with Google's guidelines, which they helpfully provided 25 guidelines on how to design a good app. But that wasn't focused on mobile apps for shopping, for fashion, so I wanted to narrow it down and really provide a set of guidelines and patterns that people could reference in the future. And last but not least, I also looked at WeChat. So as some of you may know, WeChat is actually a very interesting app that's widely used in China. where everything is done on WeChat. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people are paying their bills on WeChat. They can pay their utilities, they can book a taxi, they can do pretty much everything within the confines of one app. Now that's a very different approach from the Western world, where we have this sort of app constellation model, where one app is supposed to do one thing, and we have like hundreds of apps on our phones, but we probably use less than 7 of them. So that was a very different approach, and I also looked at how WeChat was doing it in comparison to all of these apps within the fashion and commerce space. So I will jump over to my website. Okay, so if you guys are interested, the full report is available at chi.design/IRI. You guys can read through it if you're interested. So, okay, let's scroll down a little bit. This is a map of all the apps I evaluated. So if you were to go down, each row is basically an app that was plotted out against the key actions that a user would take. And through evaluating these and benchmarking it against the 25 guidelines that Google had provided, I was able to rank each app in accordance with how well it was doing compared to other apps in the market in terms of how usable it was and how easy it was for a user to actually accomplish the thing that they set out to do. And of all of these apps, the clear winner was Urban Outfitters. They provided a very clear navigation, their categories were very clear, and they were able to showcase their products in such a manner that someone would be actually able to purchase. After evaluating all of these, I was able to devise two main flows. So this is based off of the top scoring apps in each category. And on the left here, we can see this is potentially what a successful navigation of categorization would look like. So you have on the home page, you can scroll through the content. If you were to click into one specific one, you would be taken to additional categories that would help a user understand the categories and the mental model that the place is trying to provide so that they can actually find the thing that they're looking for. On the right, we have a common navigation pattern used across many apps where there is a sticky bottom navigation, and as you scroll through different pages, you're easily able to access the key components of the app without ever losing your place. And I also was able to devise 25 guidelines in terms that was based off of the Think with Google guidelines, but was more tailored towards the fashion and commerce space. Yeah, so in addition, to go back to my, there's no presentation here. Okay, so everything is available on my website. You're free to read through it if you're interested. And my future plans include that I'll be moving out to San Francisco as well to be a designer, a design fellow as part of New Enterprise Associates, the VC Funds program. And I'm also, through this project, I was also very interested in comparing and contrasting the Eastern and Western aspects of design in applications particularly. So in the future, I want to look more into that. And yeah, so I also wanted to mention that throughout the course of the year, thanks to this generous grant, I was able to attend many conferences abroad and in the States where I met so many talented UI UX researchers who were doing various different things in terms of like input and methods of input, how people interacted with apps, how people interacted with web pages, and that really got me interested in this entire field. I started out without really understanding what it meant to be a digital product designer, but thanks to this grant, I was able to pursue this further and hone my skills in designing, as well as actually thinking about how users interact with any product. Thank you.
everyone, my name is Sean. I'm a psychobiology major, 4th year, and also a global health minor. My project is a computer lab that we developed in an under-resourced water community in Mexico. And my mentor for the project was Professor Amit Tahai of the Computer Science Department. So my motivation for this project comes a lot from my work with a group known as FISH. We're a nonprofit student-run organization that travels to Mexico every 2 weeks to provide basic health and social services to a community known as Maclovia Rojas, which has been under-resourced for a long period of time. One of my main inspirations for this project is the idea that if we influence the social determinants of health, we can improve the health of the community for a long period of time. And what the social determinants of health are these social factors that influence people's health before they see a physician. Things like education, income, race. And we saw that education particularly was something that could help Maclovia Rojas out in many ways. So the first thing we did is we spoke to the leaders in the community about what their main needs were, and we kind of found out that many of the secondary schools were very under-resourced. There weren't many teachers at the school, there weren't any programs in place to teach English lessons, and only half of the people that we surveyed said that they used a computer before. And that was something that we found very interesting because everyone here at UCLA or in the United States is used to technology and used to using the internet. So we figured that if we could use internet or technology to promote English literacy, we could possibly improve the health of the community downstream over a long period of time. So our main source of English lessons for software was Duolingo, which is an online program to help kids learn English lessons over a long period of time. If you look at the graph, these are just a few students who've been part of this program since fall quarter. So it's been about 6 or 7 months right now. And on the y-axis, you see their Duolingo points, which is determined by their activity and how many quizzes they take, how much time they spend completing activities. And to the right side of the Duolingo chart, you'll see a sign-in sheet. So we actually host in-person English lessons in Maclovia every 2 weeks, and these are run by FISH associates. So one of the biggest barriers that we found in our project was that internet wasn't as fast in Maclovia as it is here. A lot of times it was infrastructure related, that it didn't have to do with the provider only. That's something that we've actually improved only very recently, and I think that's increased the amount of students that have come out to our English lessons. In addition to that, a lot of people in Maclovia haven't used computers before, so it's important for us to teach them very, very basic concepts like turning on a computer, how to log into Duolingo, making sure that they're actually familiar with the technology. Looking forward, we also want to expand the computer lab to promote health education. Two websites that we found particularly relevant were kidshealth.org. So there's lots of programs for education for things like diabetes, for hypertension. A huge problem in Maclovia is rickettsia, which is a tick-borne bacterial disease that you don't find here in the United States. So we hope to promote Kids Health and Medline, which is another health education program. And this is a project that is long-term, it's longitudinal. FISH is going to be around for a long time. It's been around for 10 years already. It's going to be around for a while after this. So I hope to continue monitoring the progress of the computer lab next year as well, because I'll be studying at UC San Diego Medical School next year, starting in fall. So I'll be closer to the border, and I'll have a better chance to make the trip down maybe even once a week as opposed to twice a week. And I really want to thank the Internet Research Incubator for giving me this opportunity and mentoring me. More picture here. Oh.
I forgot to wait. Do you want to go back quickly? Sorry about that.
Yes, sorry.
So,
oh my God.
Wrong way. This is what? No, it's kind of. But anyways, these are like just a few of our computers that we set up. This is the whole. I can go to the next one. Oh yeah.
these are just pictures of, sorry, I'm really bad at technology. But these are the pictures of the computer lab. Just a few computers, like half the computers. We have like, I think 10 computers total. You can click right. So these are our actual in-person English lessons. In the background, you can see all the computers. So we all wear these like blue fish shirts when we go down there, so everyone knows who fish is. And this is actually like all of us during one of the health clinics. So we do both health education or health clinics in addition to the computer labs. This is just a bunch of our team. All right, Michael.
Sweet. So my project is a mind-controlled drone. So that might seem a little sci-fi, kind of out there, but I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm a junior. My name is Jeremy, and it's just something that has a really cool factor. You know, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. I first heard about it online, and the school, University of Florida, was actually doing a contest called the Brain Drone Race, and I was like, what? So I looked more into it, and it was these people controlling drones with their brains, but race is a very loose term here because they traveled 8 feet over about 10 minutes. So maybe a turtle kind of race, we don't know. But I knew that could definitely be augmented, and I saw like huge jumps that this technology could take. So this on the left here is an EEG headset. So EEG stands for electroencephalography. I don't know why it's showing the EEG, but it's a headset that's a brain-computer interface. So it reads the neurons firing the electrical stimulus inside your brain and is able to give you data from that. And then I'm sure you guys know what drones are and quadcopters. You guys have seen these. Now there's big uses in film, big uses in military and other uses. So when I originally thought of this, I knew that there could be tons of different applications, but I was kind of looking at what it could be used for in military and like search and rescue applications. So having a brain-controlled drone would be awesome because the people using it could be still 100% present in the situation that they're in. So right now, drones are controlled through like very complex controllers, or some are virtual reality controlled, all of which can be done remotely, and even if you're on location, is not very immersive. You're completely focused on flying the drone, and you have no idea what's really going on around you. So in terms of a military situation, or in search and rescue, people need to still be very aware of where they are and what's going on around them, but be using this technology still for scouting or for helping here. So I knew that I could expand upon the technology that I saw kind of at the University of Florida, and my hope was to be able to provide 6 different axes of motion. So basically full control over the drone rather than just a slow lurching forward. So went into this, I knew nothing about brain-computer interfaces. I was like, wow, super cool concept. Where do I start? I have no idea. So I was actually able to cold email the Brain Research Institute here at UCLA, and it was awesome. Got a response and actually got paired up with a postdoc researcher in a lab who was able to guide me through a lot of the basics of what it is. And I was actually able to help him with some of his research to kind of benefit me as well. And they're doing some research on people typing using vision and response. So going into this, there's 2 kind of main different ways that I could pursue. So one is through your motor skills. So on your frontal cortex, you have all your motor skills are controlled, like basically on a band on the top of your head. So that's like from moving your feet to moving your hands to your tongue. All these motor skills are controlled. And using a headset like this, you can actually measure the power, the change in power from when you're thinking about doing these motions and when you're not. So that is awesome, and it's really cool. And you think you're putting on a headset and you just think about moving your arm and it moves right. You think about moving your hand and it moves left, and it's an awesome concept, but unfortunately, it's just not nearly accurate enough, and you can only get a valid response around 30 to 40% of the time. So thinking about using that practically, you're flying a drone, you're trying to rescue someone, and they need to be rescued in the next 20 seconds, and 30% of the time you're not going to work, and it's not going to get there. So that kind of ruled it out for me. I was like, that is like cool in theory, but it doesn't really have the application that I was hoping for. So another one is called SSVEP, which is Steady State Visually Emoted. I'll get back to you on that. A ton of acronyms in this industry, and they get really confusing. But that is actually a visual stimulus. So you're looking at essentially a flashing light at a certain frequency, and that's eliciting a response in your occipital lobe in the back about the similar frequency. So that's much more reliable. Around 90% of the time you get a reliable response, which still would hopefully be improved. 90%, you still don't want a 1 to 10 times failure, but it's definitely more reliable. So the problems I ran into this is, as you can kind of see on here, I'm going to do a quick demo of the headset. The signals are very, very noisy, and that's just due to the limitations of the equipment and not being able to get actually inside your brain. There's things that I'll show you, like even just blinking can elicit a huge response in the data that is not at all representative of what your neurons are actually saying. So these kind of noises is like the biggest problem I ran into trying to do this research, because doing the data analysis, even just trying to get a binary like on off when you're thinking about going up or down is so technically challenging when you're doing Fourier transforms on this data to try to find out the right frequencies. So a lot of the time, this is how I felt. It's just kind of me, whoa, what am I doing trying to control this? But definitely through this process, I learned a ton. Just through brain-computer interfaces, I started off knowing nothing, and now can run an EEG headset and get data from it and understand more so how the brain works. We're never going to totally understand how the brain works. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the drone flying from the EEG headset, which is kind of a bummer to me, but something I'm definitely interested in pursuing in the future, and at least getting this proof of concept, if not going into more research with brain-computer interfaces. So now, I'll do a quick switch. No, maybe. Oh, there you go. So you can see this is, we're in the headset, and then all the electrodes are kind of mapped out here, which are different electrodes that measure different responses in the brain. Sweet. So this is kind of some of the response that we're getting, so that's what I'm thinking. It's pretty crazy to think about, but like, see how I'm talking right now, and it's just going crazy, and kind of like the size of data that you're looking at when you're thinking about the electrical response is like, we want to see it almost flatline in very tiny spikes. So talking obviously is not working.
You know, you're mostly getting EMG. It's not brainwaves. When you talk, it's the muscles. You're picking
exactly.
up electrical potentials in your muscles.
Exactly. So there's that, and see, even these big spikes right here, that was just me blinking. So just trying to paint a picture of how like complex it is to read these signals in a way that's like viable for this application. But it's definitely, I think that's a future of a lot of technology is going in terms of just brain controlled applications, which is kind of scary, and definitely we need to look at responsibility with that, and definitely going forward. But yeah, thank you.
While Mike was getting set up, I just want to let everyone know that he'll be doing a demo, and it might get a little shaky on the screen, so just be prepared for that. Just take a glance at it if you'd like, and then rest your eyes down, but just to be aware, it might if you're very susceptible to like motion sickness and verbal attacks.
Side note, this is the drone I built.
Hi, I'm Michael Ho. I'm a second-year art major. My mentor is Jayathi, and my research is about this term and my kind of self-proclaimed idea of metafuturism, which is the term metafuturism is derivative of an art movement that happened in the early 1900s called futurism, which is a radical push forward and a kind of iconoclastic destruction of the past, and this radical push forward for art through technology, speed, and many variables that were not widely accepted in the field of art. And so I kind of parallel this new happening of VR technology coming about, similar to how photography changed fine arts. What photography did was rendered kind of figurative representation within traditional media trivial, and introduced this kind of indexical one-to-one representation of space. And how I perceive VR affecting the context of fine arts is that we're bringing the immaterial into a seemingly material state. And so the problem that I found was the institution of art is not very accepting of certain technologies because of their seductive factors. For example, Google recently has kind of hired these artists in residence that do VR work. There's a lot of game developers that are doing VR works, and there's a few VR artists that are featured in the New Museum, which is a contemporary commercial art gallery in New York. And so the issue that I found was that there were commercial boundaries. There's in terms of the game development, there are too many seductive values that take away from the kind of commercial commercialability of certain VR works. And the technology is hyper-exclusive, so it's incredibly expensive, kind of discouraging artists from using it. And so I perceive VR technology as creating and necessitating its own kind of proprietary set of metrics to evaluate VR art. No longer can analysis and metrics used to analyze painting, sculpture, and graphics. They no longer apply to the VR work because of the operations of working in a seemingly material state, but working with immaterial tools. And so this whole idea of metafuturism is kind of my idea of this radical push forward and a destruction of certain metrics that don't apply to this new work. There are painterly, sculptural, and graphic tendencies within VR. For example, you could look at a ball in VR, and then you could duplicate that and scale it up. Because we're conditioned to perceive this idea of material, the larger scale ball will seemingly have some sort of formal hierarchy or seemingly more important value than the small one. Those are kind of metrics that are used to analyze physical work in sculpture, but the operations don't apply because you can duplicate, scale up infinitely and effortlessly in VR, although we're conditioned to think that way. This whole idea of metafuturism is a thought experiment and a projection for a ideal bespoke future in which VR work can exist in the canonical system of fine arts. And so these ideas I kind of dealt with examined not VR as some sort of technological platform that I want to develop hardware and software for, but I'm simply utilizing and appropriating these tools in a fine arts context to determine what kind of aspects of critical theory and critical analysis are going to be normalized. And I created my own set of metrics that introduces a new kind of radical thinking of how, a proprietary kind of radical thinking towards VR as its own medium, and not a medium in which painting, sculpture, and graphical work can exist in. So my research methods predominantly deal with critical theory, which is this kind of overarching term for why is art significant in culture. And so I looked at kind of like the sculptural, photographic, and graphic tendencies that exist, and how those kind of traditional media are assessed. And then through that, as a response, I created a set of metrics in the form of an artist statement that kind of explained how the quantifications of the quality of a work are somewhat useless if you view it through the spectacle of traditional media. VR work necessitates an entirely new set of critical theory. And so what the IRI enabled me to do is kind of take this technology that is hyper-exclusive to artists. The art department itself, I proposed this to a few of my professors, and it was shot down purely because they believed that the technology was too seductive. They believed that the work that I would make and the artists would make would be central around this idea of technology and not about the content itself. The work that I'm going to show you in a bit is by no means the most aesthetic and phenomenologically pleasing work, but what I wanted to do through that is use that kind of normalcy in a conscious effort to devalue this like central idea of the technology and make it more about the content itself. The conclusion that I created is not me proposing that I'm some sort of a pioneer in this field. It's the only way that my work can continue is through institutional reception. If I keep pushing forth this idea of metafuturism and VR as its own concept, introducing certain metrics of critical theory within fine arts, then it can enter the more canonical kind of context of fine arts, and then perhaps our own art department at UCLA will be able to open its doors to kind of new avenues of technology that they currently look down upon. So I'm going to show you and kind of just describe exactly the metrics that apply within the VR works that I created. Okay. I use these software Unity and Tilt Brush, and also another limitation that I found was the technology is incredibly rudimentary. That's why my work is based heavily around not the technology itself, but through critical theory. Critical theory is more of has more of a universal application that can apply not in contemporary terms of fine arts, but in a future sense, in which the VR technology is accessible, practical, and kind of canonized within fine arts. So let me pop this up. So I'm just gonna head over here. Yeah, it might get a little, Nick Scott said. So this is my take on a kind of art space. And so what I have here is this kind of phenomenological experience. This creates a more intimate relationship with the body and the work that can't be achieved through current technologies or like physical art. As you can see, this is a sculpture, a light sculpture that I created in VR work. And what I mean by this kind of phenomenological material relationship is that I can actually enter this work, and there's more navigability that can't be achieved in traditional galleries, and creates this kind of hyper-exclusive problem when it comes to artwork and its disseminability. And so, as you can see here, these are audio-reactive kind of waveforms that are presented as seemingly floating in the sky. In physical reality, this is not possible. It is a crucial element when you're working physically to think about the physical limitations. For example, this work is the exact same as this work, but this is scaled up. Like I was saying, there's a formal hierarchy that we're conditioned to think, as if this work is seemingly more grandiose and important than a smaller work that sits on the ground. But theoretically speaking, there is no kind of formal hierarchy, just because this was effortlessly scaled up. And if this work were to exist in real life, you would have to consider the fact that there would be in need of some sort of suspension cables or some sort of like reinforcement bar that's attached to the wall. And then that idea of physical limitations is really crucial to the reading of the work. All those limitations that that an art critic or an artist has to consider is completely diminished within virtual reality space. And so, like, in terms of the internet, because the internet is a globally accessible instant archive of information, you can kind of perfectly recreate every single one of these phenomenological experiences within the VR space without sacrificing any crucial elements that you can't achieve with even digital media, if you would think about that. Like, digital media and DMA designers kind of have their work, but it's all presented on proprietary screens. As, for example, if you have your phone out, you can only view it on that 2D platform, or if you saw it on the screen, you could only view it through that platform. But through the internet, you can kind of spread these just like VR works and completely replicate them. So my hopes and my ideas for the future of VR artists is for their practice to purely exist online with no geographic limitation and no sense of exclusivity. And for metafuturism to kind of destroy some of these radical theories against technology within the arts and propose something that would allow VR artists to exist in a more critical lens and not through a commercial lens like the market.
Thank you. So, Michael, you can stay up here, and Ashley, Chi-Chi, Sean, Jeremy, if you come up. We just have 5 minutes for questions. I'm sure there are some after these awesome presentations. And if you do have a question, if you could use the microphone just because I'm trying to record the audio.
So Michael, you brought up an interesting issue. In the VR world, I can take a piece of art that you created and modify it, and now it becomes ours in a way, which is a problem we have currently with joint research works on the web, collaborative, who owns it, who gets the credit, etc. So that's a universal issue across many of the technologies. Have you thought about how to deal with that, especially with the metrics you're putting in for curation and evaluation?
When I was thinking about the issues of authorship and the platform that I'm disseminating this work through, I think a simple answer would be like encryption, and also not providing these files through the internet, but using the internet as a platform to just share it to possibly other galleries. If there are certain geographic locations, like contemporary art galleries around the nation, they can share files with one another, and then through their own proprietary hardware, they can have the show simultaneously exist at the same time globally. And so I'm not necessarily proposing that in the future every single person is going to have a VR headset, and when there is an art show, they're going to download it and view it through it. But kind of removing this idea that a gallery is a kind of a singular, exclusive location that a work can only exist in. If you're a painter, you can only have your paintings in a single space at one time, which is exclusive and kind of curates like a bourgeois class. And so my idea is just using the internet. If you're going to disseminate your work commercially, there would be a need for encryption and then a key. But my hopes is for the next step of LA art galleries, New York art galleries, is for them to kind of adopt this kind of hardware as a platform to possibly show and view singular artists in simultaneous places.
Actually, how about the bubble he's creating?
Was it legitimate? Okay. Sure. I would say that like the art space, there is a bubble that like, I know that you're saying that it wouldn't be necessarily feasible for everyone to have a VR headset, but like access to gallery spaces is also a bubble. Like that's why they put MoCA like downtown, like where it's viewable by everyone. So I think that there are bubbles that are trying to already be broken, like to make art more accessible to everyone.
So yeah, having those like publicly available in galleries that already like have the integrity to not share the files, like that'd be cool.
This is for Ashley. Going back to your filter bubbles, how does data play into it? Because, you know, one of the examples you gave is connecting people sort of by generation or by language, which is sort of taking advantage of the connectivity potential of the internet. But you also talked about historically trying to find, you know, as generations grow and move, the way we think and how you've captured what was interesting to somebody, you know, from previous generation or multiple generations. I mean, it's always been sort of a problem of history that what you don't record, you can't really share. So have you thought about that to figure out, is it even possible to capture at least the critically important data that can help break through those filter bubbles? Because otherwise stuff just happens in real time and it goes away, and if you miss that opportunity, then it's basically gone.
Right. So I feel like in the modern age, as we like create so much data, it'll be easier to track. It might be more difficult for the past. Actually, one thing that my mentor, Professor Blanchett, studies is how a lot of information from the past, it turns over so quickly. So like CD-ROMs, a lot of computers don't even have those anymore, and that data is lost. And not having that hardware anymore, like, is losing the data from the past actively. I think that the idea of what is important to record can sometimes be solved by thinking about what people talk about today. So if only certain movies are talked about today, then those probably are the ones that will stand the test of time that are important. So just starting now by like seeing what people are talking about on their different platforms is probably how I would start to sift through the data of what is important. But that is a really good question.
I mean, are there people that are archiving data and taking snapshots of what's happened in the past, or is it really true that what's gone is gone? You know, emails from 1995, or what a website looked like, you know, before you guys were born.
Yeah, I'd say like the Wayback Machine is like a really good example. I didn't used to work at the Wayback Machine, Scott. Yeah, like in San Francisco. They have literal screenshots of sites from the past to kind of track like the history as a site has evolved, which is also really good for like accountability. If sites like NASA, for example, like they had to be taken down when Trump was elected, like certain sites, and everyone was like frantically trying to collect all the data before the page went down, because a lot of the times like that can turn over so quickly as well. I think it's a really big task to see where the data is going to go, but because people are saying so much, I think that what will like matter later is what is talked about the most, so we should be able to capture like the popular things.
We have time for one more question. More questions? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's give them one more round of applause. And before we close out, Len will give a final address.
Not a final address, but more. Is on?
Yep.
But more commentary. First, I was really impressed with how poised these young people are in their presentation and organized. It was very professional, and it makes me feel great to see that kind of impact. The variety of topics was especially pleasing. It's from all over the technology, the humanities, and that's what you get when you reach out to a large community and pick those which excite a variety of different tastes, if you will. Now, I deal a lot of time with graduate students doing research and mentoring and working with them. I have to tell you, I was very, very impressed with the level of the undergraduates doing really professional, research-driven tasks. I think part of the secret here is we let you do the thing you wanted, not what somebody else told you to do. And that brought out the enthusiasm and the curiosity and the approach. And it is the approach, the questions you're asking, Not so much the solutions, but the questions you ask, the things you try to accomplish, and the conclusions, be it final conclusion or just a wide open area, again, was every bit as representative of what you're going to find among your graduate studies. So that was really good. And last, I'm especially encouraged and pleased that my generation is passing on to your generation in the midst of this insanity in the political world, a great confidence that you're going to take good care of this planet on which we live. So thank you very much to the graduating students and to the incoming students. You got a good idea what we expect of you. Thank you very much.